If you've ever glanced at a 1964 Lincoln penny and assumed it was just another ordinary cent, stay with me, because this is one of those coins that quietly surprises people. Some verified examples of this exact date, with no mint mark, have sold for prices that feel completely disconnected from 1 cent. Not because every 1964 penny is rare, but because a small number of them carry hidden traits that collectors aggressively seek. And this is where many people get confused, because the most valuable versions don't look valuable at first glance. The 1964 Lincoln penny without a mint mark was struck in Philadelphia during one of the busiest years in U.S. coin production. America was in the middle of massive economic expansion, and the mint was producing billions of coins to keep up with everyday commerce. That means most 1964 pennies are still common today. But here's a detail collectors quietly watch. The sheer volume also created opportunities for unusual errors, unusual strikes, and rare condition survivors that now command serious attention. This coin features Abraham Lincoln on the front, as designed by Victor David Brenner, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, the classic design Americans carried for decades. The composition is 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, which gives these coins a heavier feel than modern cents. And while that alone doesn't make them rare, this difference can completely change interest when combined with condition, strike quality, or minting mistakes. This is where many people get confused, because the missing mint mark doesn't automatically mean rarity. A blank space under the date simply means it was struck in Philadelphia, which produced the majority of all Lincoln cents. However, collectors don't just look at the date and mint. They look at surfaces, strike sharpness, color, and microscopic features that separate common pocket change from quiet wealth discovery. Some 1964 no-mint mark pennies show unusually strong strikes, blazing red color, or perfectly centered details. These are the coins that grading services often certify at high levels, and this difference can completely change interest from a few cents to hundreds, and in select examples, thousands of dollars. But there's more. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: mint errors. In 1964, the mint was operating at extremely high speed, and mistakes slipped through. Some coins show doubled dies, where parts of the lettering or date appear slightly doubled under magnification. Others display off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. Most errors are minor, but certain types have produced life-changing sale results for select examples, especially when certified and preserved in strong condition. This is where many people get confused, because they expect rare coins to look damaged. But damage lowers value. True mint errors are different. They happen during production and follow specific patterns that specialists recognize. And that difference can completely change interest from collectors who are willing to pay strong premiums. Let's talk about real-world values, not hype, not guesses, just realistic ranges. Most circulated 1964 no-mint mark pennies, the kind found in jars, drawers, and old coffee cans, are typically worth 2 to 5 cents due to copper content. Clean examples with minimal wear might sell for a bit more, especially in bulk. Uncirculated examples, with full original luster and no signs of handling, can range from $1 to $15 depending on quality. But here's the detail collectors quietly watch. Certified coins graded MS65 red and higher often sell for $40, $100 or more, depending on eye appeal and demand. And at the very top end, nearly flawless, blazing red examples graded MS67 or above, auction prices have reached into the thousands. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, and that's why collectors never dismiss this date outright. This is where quiet wealth discovery happens, not from luck, but from careful inspection and patience. Now let's talk about what separates common examples from high-value ones. Color is critical. Copper coins are graded as red, red-brown, or brown. Red coins retain most of their original mint color, and are far scarcer decades later. This difference can completely change interest from collectors who prioritize visual appeal and originality. Strike sharpness also matters. Look closely at Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat lines. Strong detail increases desirability. Weak strikes, flat spots, or dull surfaces reduce value even if the coin looks clean. Surface preservation is another key factor. Scratches, cleaning marks, fingerprints, or polishing, even when well-intentioned, permanently reduce collector value. This is where many people get confused because cleaning feels like improvement, but in the coin world, it usually destroys premium potential. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: storage history. Coins kept untouched in rolls, envelopes, or albums often preserve their original surfaces. Those pulled from circulation usually show wear, contact marks, and oxidation. That difference can completely change interest and price. Now let's talk about mistakes owners make that quietly erase value. The most common mistake is cleaning coins with chemicals, cloths, or abrasives. Even gentle rubbing leaves microscopic scratches that grading services detect instantly. A coin that could have sold for hundreds can drop to near face value after cleaning. And this is where many people get confused because the coin looks better to the naked eye. Another mistake is improper storage. Moisture, heat, and air exposure accelerate toning and corrosion. Storing copper coins loose in jars or damp containers can permanently damage surfaces. Collectors prefer coins stored in dry, stable conditions, ideally in protective holders. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch: emotional selling. Some people rush to sell without understanding what they have, accepting low offers because they assume their coin is common. Meanwhile, patient sellers who take time to learn, photograph, and authenticate their coins sometimes experience unexpected income from what they once dismissed as pocket change. Now let's talk about varieties. While 1964 doesn't have famous double die varieties like some other years, minor doubling and die variations exist. These require magnification to spot and professional confirmation to value accurately. This difference can completely change interest, but only when verified by trusted grading services. Here's where quiet wealth discovery becomes real. It's not about hoping for miracles. It's about knowing what to look for, recognizing subtle differences, and understanding that rarity often lives in condition and detail, not just in dates. Some collectors focus on copper brilliance. Others chase error coins. Others seek registry-grade perfection. All of them study coins like the 1964 no-mint mark penny carefully, because every once in a while, one surfaces that completely defies expectations. This is where many people get confused, because they think rare coins are only found in old collections or museums. In reality, many valuable coins were pulled from everyday circulation decades ago and stored unknowingly. Some remain undiscovered even now, sitting in drawers, safes, and inherited jars, quietly waiting for the right person to look closely enough. Let's talk about how patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income. It often starts with curiosity. Someone notices a coin looks unusually sharp, red, or different. They research, compare, and eventually submit it for grading. Most coins come back ordinary, but occasionally one returns with a high grade or confirmed variety, and suddenly, what was once ignored becomes a serious asset. This is where life-changing sale results for select examples come from, not from luck alone, but from persistence, knowledge, and careful evaluation. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch: timing. Market demand fluctuates. Some years see stronger interest in Lincoln cents than others. Patient sellers who wait for favorable conditions often outperform those who rush to sell during weak demand cycles. Now let's bring this back to your own collection. If you own 1964 no-mint mark pennies, don't dismiss them, but don't assume rarity either. Look closely at color, surfaces, strike quality, and unusual features. Compare them to certified examples online. If something stands out, consider professional evaluation before making any decisions. This is where many people get confused, because the coin itself doesn't announce its value. The difference lies in details most people overlook, and that difference can completely change interest, demand, and final selling price. Before we wrap up, here's the key takeaway. The 1964 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is one of the most common sense in American history. Yet within that massive population exists a tiny group of exceptional survivors and rare errors that represent hidden financial potential. Not guaranteed wealth, not easy money, but real, documented, quiet opportunities for those willing to learn and look carefully. If you enjoyed this breakdown, check out the next video where we examine another Lincoln penny date that surprised collectors with strong auction results, and why most owners overlook it. And right now, take a moment to check your own pennies. Look closely, compare carefully, because sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins hold the most unexpected stories, and occasionally, quiet wealth discovery waiting to be noticed. If you've ever emptied an old jar of pennies onto a kitchen table, chances are you've seen this date without thinking twice. 1967. No mint mark. Just another brown coin, right? But here's what most people don't realize. A small number of verified 1967 Lincoln pennies have sold for surprisingly high prices, not because they're old, but because of what makes certain examples different. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what collectors quietly look for, and why some owners have experienced what can only be described as a quiet wealth discovery from a coin they nearly spent. Stay with me because this difference can completely change interest. The year 1967 sits in one of the most misunderstood eras of U.S. coinage. America was deep into the Cold War, the space race was accelerating, and the U.S. Mint was facing a nationwide coin shortage. To discourage hoarding, the government made a bold decision. From 1965 through 1967, mint marks were removed entirely. That means whether your penny was made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it shows no mint mark at all. This is where many people get confused. Most collectors today instantly search for letters like D or S under the date. But with 1967 pennies, that clue doesn't exist. Instead, collectors focus on strike quality, condition, composition, and rare varieties, and this difference can completely change interest and value. Now, at first glance, the 1967 Lincoln penny looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, copper color. But these coins were struck during a massive production push. Over 3 billion pennies were made that year. And that huge number is exactly why most 1967 pennies are worth only face value. But here's the detail collectors quietly watch. When millions of coins are rushed through presses, mistakes happen. And in the world of numismatics, certain mistakes, combined with exceptional condition, are what turn everyday coins into high-interest collector pieces with hidden financial potential. Let's talk about what your 1967 penny is actually made of. These coins are 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing about 3.11 grams. That copper content alone gives them more value than modern zinc pennies, especially during periods when copper prices rise. But the real value isn't in the metal. It's in the strike quality and rarity factors. This is where many people get confused. Two 1967 pennies can look almost identical at first glance, but one might be worth 1 cent, while another, in rare, certified condition, can reach into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So what separates common examples from high-value ones? First, condition. Most 1967 pennies spent decades in circulation. They were dropped on sidewalks, scraped across countertops, stored in damp jars, and passed through countless hands. That means most examples today show dull surfaces, worn lettering, and weak details. Those are common, and collectors pay little attention to them. But some coins never circulated. These are called uncirculated or mint state coins. And in 1967, the Mint did not issue standard proof sets for collectors. Instead, they produced special mint sets, often called SMS coins. Here's the detail collectors quietly watch. Some 1967 pennies came from these special mint sets and have unusually sharp strikes, smooth satin-like surfaces, and clean rims. These coins look noticeably different once you know what to look for. And when graded by major certification services at high levels, especially MS67 or above, they've achieved life-changing sale results for select examples. Not common examples, not random pocket change, but select coins in exceptional condition. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's talk about varieties, because this is where hidden financial potential really begins to surface. One known area of collector focus is double die varieties. These happen when the die that strikes the coin receives multiple impressions that are slightly misaligned, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. On some 1967 pennies, collectors have spotted doubling in the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust." This is where many people get confused. Not all doubling is valuable. Most doubling you see is mechanical doubling, a flat, shelf-like distortion caused during the strike. True doubled dies show rounded, separated letters that look like shadows or extra impressions. The difference between these two can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and a coin worth hundreds. Another variety collectors quietly watch is repunched or misplaced mint characteristics. Though since mint marks were removed that year, focus shifts more toward die breaks, off-center strikes, and broad strikes. Some 1967 pennies were struck slightly off-center, missing parts of the design while still showing the full date. These error coins can command significant collector interest, especially when dramatic but still visually appealing. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's talk about realistic value ranges, because credibility matters. Most circulated 1967 pennies are worth between 1 and 3 cents. Even in nice condition, many trade for under $1. But uncirculated examples with strong eye appeal often sell for a few dollars to tens of dollars. Here's where things shift. Certified mint state examples graded MS66 and above can sell from $50 to several $100s depending on color, luster, and strike quality. And at the very top, MS67 red examples, auction results have reached into the four-figure range in some verified cases. These are the life-changing sale results for select examples that collectors quietly track, not promises, not guarantees, but documented market outcomes. This is where many people get confused. Just because one coin sold for a high price doesn't mean all of them will. But it does prove that this date carries hidden financial potential when the right conditions come together. Now let's talk about mistakes owners make that reduce value, because this is critical. One of the biggest mistakes is cleaning coins. Scrubbing a penny with baking soda, vinegar, or metal polish might make it look shiny, but to collectors, that destroys original surfaces. A cleaned coin often loses 70 to 90% of its potential collector value instantly. Even rare varieties lose appeal once cleaned. Another mistake is improper storage. Keeping coins loose in jars, drawers, or plastic bags exposes them to moisture, friction, and air damage. Over time, that dulls luster and creates spotting, and this difference can completely change interest from buyers. This is where many people get confused. People think brighter means better. In numismatics, originality almost always beats shine. Now let's talk about how patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income. Many collectors didn't find valuable 1967 pennies right away. Some discovered them years after inheriting collections, organizing estate boxes, or sorting through old coin rolls. The key wasn't speed. It was patience and knowledge. They didn't rush to sell. They learned what to look for. They compared examples. They got coins professionally evaluated when something seemed unusual. This is the quiet wealth discovery process, not a lottery ticket, not instant money, but informed, careful identification and sometimes unexpectedly strong results. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch that most people overlook: color designation. Copper coins are graded not only by condition, but by color: red, red-brown, or brown. A 1967 penny that still retains full original red mint luster is far scarcer than brown examples. Two coins with the same grade number can differ dramatically in value depending on color designation. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's go deeper into the special mint set coins, because this is one of the most misunderstood areas. In 1967, instead of traditional proof coins, the mint issued SMS coins with higher than average strike quality, but not quite proof-level mirror surfaces. These coins often show strong details, smooth fields, and squared rims. Many collectors confuse them with normal business strikes, but specialists can spot the difference immediately. This is where many people get confused. Some SMS pennies, when graded at the highest levels, have achieved remarkable prices, not because they're common, but because top-quality examples are extremely scarce. The difference between MS66 and MS67, for example, can be massive in market value, even though the coins look nearly identical to untrained eyes. This difference can completely change interest. Let's talk briefly about error coins, because 1967 had its share. Some pennies were struck on improperly prepared planchets, resulting in missing metal areas, laminations, or uneven surfaces. Others show clipped planchets, where a curved piece is missing from the edge. Still others were struck off-center or with partial collar strikes, causing the rims to expand unusually. Collectors seek visually dramatic but authentic mint errors. These coins often sell for tens, hundreds, or more, depending on severity and eye appeal. This is where many people get confused. Damage after minting, like dents, scratches, or corrosion, is not the same as mint errors. Only errors that happen during the minting process carry collector value. Now let's talk about what you can realistically do if you have a 1967 penny. First, look closely at the condition. Does it still have bright red color, sharp details, and smooth surfaces? Or does it look dull, dark, or worn? Second, check for unusual features: doubling, off-center strikes, clipped edges, or unusual textures. Third, weigh the coin if possible. A normal 1967 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences can signal an error. This is where many people get confused. They assume rare coins look obviously strange. Sometimes they do, but often, the most valuable coins look ordinary unless you know exactly what to examine. Now let's talk about selling and why patience matters more than speed. Many owners rush to local shops or online listings without understanding what they have. That can result in undervaluation or missed opportunities. The most successful sellers, the ones who experience quiet wealth discovery, take time to research auction records, consult professionals, and consider certification for coins that appear exceptional. Certification isn't cheap, but for coins with strong potential, it can unlock buyer confidence and dramatically increase market appeal. This difference can completely change interest. Now here's something important to understand. The 1967 no mint mark Lincoln penny is not rare by default. Most examples are common, but select examples with top-grade condition, special mint characteristics, or verified mint errors have achieved life-changing sale results for select examples. That doesn't mean everyone will find one, but it does mean this date deserves far more attention than it usually gets. And this is exactly why collectors continue to search rolls, jars, and collections for this coin, because hidden financial potential often lives inside overlooked dates. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: strike sharpness. Some 1967 pennies show weak details, especially on Lincoln's hair and beard. Others show unusually crisp detail and strong rims. That sharpness often signals superior die quality or early strikes, both of which increase collector interest. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's bring this home. If you have a 1967 penny, don't assume it's worthless, but don't assume it's valuable either. Instead, treat it as a candidate for closer inspection. Look at condition. Look for unusual features. Compare examples. Learn what high-grade coins really look like. This is where many people get confused. They expect instant answers. But coin value, especially with modern-era dates like 1967, rewards patience, education, and careful evaluation. Some people discover nothing unusual. Others discover a coin that turns out to be far more valuable than expected, not because of luck, but because they took time to learn. That's the quiet wealth discovery mindset. Before you go, I encourage you to check your own penny jars, old rolls, and inherited collections, especially for 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln cents. And if this kind of hidden value storytelling interests you, watch our next video on another overlooked penny date that collectors quietly monitor for unexpected market results. Because in coin collecting, knowledge and patience matter more than speed, and sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest surprises. Imagine pulling a penny from an old jar, flipping it over, and seeing the date, 1970, with a tiny letter D beneath it. Most people would shrug and drop it back into the pile. But here's what many don't realize. Certain verified examples of this exact coin have sold for unusually high prices, sometimes shocking collectors who thought they were holding nothing special. Today, we're diving into the 1970 D Lincoln penny, why it still commands attention more than 50 years later, and how a simple detail could quietly change how collectors see your coin. This is where many people get confused, because not every 1970 D penny is rare, and not everyone is valuable. But some specific examples have shown life-changing sale results for select owners. And the difference between a common coin and one with hidden financial potential can come down to details most people never notice. Let's start with the story behind this coin. The year 1970 was a turning point in American coinage. By this time, the U.S. Mint had already removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters, and copper was becoming more expensive. The Lincoln Memorial penny was still made mostly of copper, but changes were on the horizon. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of pennies in 1970, all marked with that small D below the date. At first glance, it seems like a massively common coin, and that's true for most examples. But here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Within large mintage years, certain strikes, conditions, and varieties can rise far above the rest. The 1970 D penny is one of those dates where surface appearance, strike quality, and subtle anomalies can make a dramatic difference. This difference can completely change interest, especially when collectors see a coin that looks almost untouched, with sharp details, blazing luster, and no obvious wear. Now let's talk about why collectors still care about this date. On paper, the 1970 D penny shouldn't be special. Millions were saved. Millions still exist. But the market isn't driven only by how many coins were made. It's driven by how many survive in exceptional condition. And for the 1970 D penny, truly high-grade examples are surprisingly hard to find. This is where many people get confused, because a penny from 1970 might look nice to the naked eye, but collectors use magnification and grading standards that are far stricter. Even the smallest mark on Lincoln's cheek, or a weak strike in the lettering, can lower the grade and dramatically reduce collector interest. But when a 1970 D penny survives in near-perfect condition, especially certified by a professional grading service, collectors pay attention. Some top-condition examples have sold for hundreds, and in select situations, even higher when competition is strong and demand spikes. That's where quiet wealth discovery sometimes happens, not from everyday pocket change, but from coins that were carefully saved decades ago and forgotten. Now let's break down the specifics. The 1970 Lincoln cent is primarily made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. It weighs about 3.11 grams. That copper content alone gives it a solid feel compared to modern zinc pennies. But metal value isn't the story here, collector value is. What really matters is strike quality, surface preservation, and eye appeal. This is where many people get confused, because two coins from the same year and mint can look similar at first glance, but one might be worth face value, while the other could be worth many times more. Collectors look closely at Lincoln's portrait, especially the hair above the ear, the cheekbone, and the jawline. On the reverse, they study the Lincoln memorial steps, columns, and lettering. Weak strikes or flat details reduce desirability. Sharp, bold strikes increase it. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch: original mint luster. That shimmering cartwheel effect when you tilt the coin under light is one of the strongest indicators of a high-grade example. Once luster is gone, value usually drops sharply. Now let's talk about varieties and anomalies. Unlike the famous 1970 small date penny from the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver version doesn't have a widely recognized small date or double die variety that commands major premiums. But that doesn't mean it's boring. This difference can completely change interest, because collectors often hunt for subtle die cracks, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, or unusual planchet errors. While most of these bring modest premiums, some dramatic errors, like significant off-center strikes with full dates visible, can bring strong prices when authenticated. But the biggest driver of value for the 1970 penny remains condition. This is where many people get confused, because most circulated examples, even nice ones, are usually worth just a few cents to maybe a quarter. Light wear, dull surfaces, or small scratches quickly bring the value down to near face value. But once you move into uncirculated territory, especially coins graded MS65, MS66, or higher, the story changes. Here's a realistic breakdown of value ranges. A worn or circulated 1970 penny typically sells for face value to maybe 5 cents, depending on condition and demand. A lightly circulated example with decent color might reach 10 to 20 cents. Uncirculated coins without certification often trade in the $1 to $3 range, depending on eye appeal. But certified examples in high mint state grades, especially MS66 and above, can sell for tens, sometimes hundreds of dollars, and in rare market conditions, even more. These are the coins that generate headlines, auction buzz, and stories of unexpected income from forgotten collections. That's what we mean by hidden financial potential, not in every coin, but in select examples that meet very specific standards. Now let's talk about mistakes that reduce value. This is where many people get confused, because the biggest mistake owners make is cleaning their coins. Even gentle wiping with a cloth can leave microscopic scratches that permanently damage the surface. Once cleaned, a coin usually loses most of its collector value, even if it looks shiny. Another mistake is improper storage. Pennies kept loose in jars or drawers rub against each other, creating contact marks. Over decades, this can turn a potentially valuable uncirculated coin into a common circulated one. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch: color. Original red copper color is highly prized. Coins that have turned brown or spotty over time usually bring lower prices, even in high grades. Now let's talk about how patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income. Many high-grade 1970 pennies weren't found in circulation. They came from mint sets, old rolls, or collections assembled decades ago and forgotten in drawers, closets, or safety deposit boxes. Someone opens a box, sees old pennies, assumes they're all common, but one coin stands out with blazing luster and sharp detail. This difference can completely change interest, because once that coin is professionally graded and authenticated, it enters a very different market. Suddenly, it's not just a penny, it's a certified collectible with established demand and auction history. That's where quiet wealth discovery happens, not overnight, not guaranteed, but through patience, knowledge, and careful evaluation. Now here's something important. Not every high-grade coin becomes a major sale. The market fluctuates. Demand rises and falls. But what remains constant is that top-condition examples of common dates often outperform expectations because so few survive in truly pristine condition. This is where many people get confused, because they hear about a high sale price and assume every coin from that year is valuable. That's never how the market works. Instead, it's about rarity within condition, not rarity of date. Now let's talk about how to check your own 1970 penny. First, look for the small d beneath the date that confirms it was struck in Denver. Next, check the surfaces under strong light. Look for scratches, dullness, or dark spots. Then tilt the coin and watch for luster. Strong, uninterrupted shine is a good sign. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: sharpness of the design. Lincoln's hair jawline and the memorial columns should look crisp, not flat. The cleaner and sharper those features, the more potential the coin may have. And if a coin looks unusually clean, bright, and untouched, that's when it may be worth further evaluation, possibly even professional grading, depending on overall condition and market demand. This difference can completely change interest, because certified coins operate in a very different price category than raw, uncertified ones. Now let's talk about expectations. Most 1970 pennies are common. That's the honest truth. But some survive in remarkable condition, and those select examples have demonstrated life-changing sale results for certain owners. Not because they were lucky, but because they understood what collectors look for and waited for the right opportunity. That's the real story behind this coin. It's not about hype. It's about knowledge, patience, and recognizing hidden financial potential when others overlook it. This is where many people get confused, because they rush to sell or assume nothing is valuable without learning the difference between ordinary and exceptional. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch: consistency. One strong coin might not bring top dollar unless demand is strong at the time of sale. That's why seasoned collectors and sellers watch the market, study auction trends, and wait for favorable conditions. Now let's bring this together. The 1970 Lincoln penny isn't rare by mintage numbers, but in high-grade condition with original luster and sharp strike, it becomes something very different, a coin that commands attention, competition, and sometimes surprisingly strong prices. It's a reminder that even the most ordinary-looking coins can hold quiet wealth discovery. Not guaranteed, not universal, but real enough that experienced collectors never ignore them. So if you have old pennies, especially from rolls, sets, or family collections, take a closer look. That small d under the date might not mean much at first glance, but in the right condition, it could tell a very different story. And if you want to keep learning which pennies collectors quietly watch, which dates have hidden financial potential, and how small details can change everything, watch the next video, where we explore another Lincoln penny that surprised the market in ways few expected. Because in coin collecting, knowledge and patience matter far more than speed, and sometimes, the smallest coins carry the biggest stories. If you've ever dumped out a jar of old pennies and noticed a 1978 Lincoln cent with no mint mark, this next few minutes could change how you look at your pocket change forever. Because while most of these coins are common, a small number of verified examples have sold for unusually high prices, not because they're old, but because of tiny details most people never think to check. And in a moment, I'll show you what collectors quietly look for before deciding whether a coin is worth 1 cent or something far more serious. This is one of those coins that lives in plain sight. Millions of people have handled it. Most never look twice, But every year, a few owners experience what collectors call a quiet wealth discovery, when a simple-looking penny turns out to have hidden financial potential. Not guaranteed, not common, but real. Let's talk about what makes the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny different, and why this ordinary-looking coin still draws attention today. The 1978 Lincoln cent was struck during a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins every year. The country was coming out of economic uncertainty, inflation was high, and copper prices were climbing. Pennies were still being made from solid copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc, which already makes them heavier and more desirable to collectors than modern cents. When you see a 1978 penny with no mint mark, that means it was struck in Philadelphia. And here's where many people get confused. No mint mark doesn't mean rare by default. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 5 billion of these coins that year. Most are worth just a few cents over face value. But collectors don't hunt average coins. They hunt outliers. And that's where this story becomes interesting. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: condition. Two coins from the same year can look identical at a glance, yet one might be worth a few cents while another sells for hundreds, or in rare cases, thousands. It all comes down to preservation, strike quality, and microscopic flaws. Most 1978 pennies were heavily circulated. They went through vending machines, registers, pockets, and drawers for decades. That wear erases value fast, but a small number were set aside early, stored carefully, and never entered circulation. These are called uncirculated or mint state coins, and among those, only a tiny percentage receive high professional grades. This difference can completely change interest. A circulated 1978 no mint mark penny might be worth 1 to 3 cents. A clean, uncirculated example might reach a few dollars. But professionally certified coins graded MS66 or higher, meaning near-perfect surfaces and strong detail, have sold for dramatically higher prices in collector auctions. Not because the coin is rare in quantity, but because it's rare in condition. And this is where many people get confused. They assume age equals value. But in modern coins, condition often matters more than date. A flawless common coin can outperform a damaged rare one. Now let's go deeper, because condition alone isn't the full story. Collectors also look closely for varieties and minting anomalies. These are tiny differences created during the minting process that most people would never notice without magnification. On some 1978 pennies, there are doubled dies, where parts of the lettering or date appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. These aren't common, but when they appear, collectors take notice fast. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: doubling on Liberty, the date 1978, or the words "In God We Trust." True doubled dies look raised and rounded, not flat or shelf-like. That difference can completely change interest. There are also off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and wrong metal errors, all rare but documented. And when authenticated, some of these error coins have produced life-changing sale results for select examples. Not guaranteed, not common, but real. Now let's talk realistic value ranges, because credibility matters. A worn, circulated 1978 no mint mark penny, typically 1 to 3 cents. A clean, bright, uncirculated coin from a roll or old collection, usually $2 to $10 depending on eye appeal. A professionally graded coin in MS66 condition, often several $100s. And top-tier MS67 or higher examples, especially with strong strike quality and no visible flaws, have reached four-figure territory at auction, depending on demand and timing. This difference can completely change interest, from spare change to serious collector asset. But here's where many people make costly mistakes. The first mistake is cleaning the coin. Even light rubbing can permanently destroy collectible value. Cleaning removes original surfaces and creates hairline scratches that grading services immediately penalize. A cleaned coin, even if rare, often sells for a fraction of what it otherwise could have. Another mistake is assuming shine equals condition. Many cleaned coins look bright but are actually damaged. Meanwhile, untouched coins with natural color often perform better in the market. Here's another detail collectors quietly watch: storage history. Coins kept in envelopes, drawers, or rolls without moisture exposure tend to age far better than coins stored in plastic bags or damp environments. And this is where many people get confused. They think grading is optional. But for higher value coins, third-party certification is often what unlocks serious buyer interest. Without professional grading, even a great-looking coin may struggle to reach its full potential. Now let's talk about why collectors still care about this date. 1978 marks one of the final full years of copper Lincoln cents before the composition changed in 1982. That alone makes it historically interesting. But more importantly, the massive mintage means collectors have plenty of average examples, yet very few elite ones. And in coin collecting, scarcity at the top is often more powerful than scarcity at the bottom. That's why auction results continue to surprise people. Not because every coin is valuable, but because a small number cross a threshold where competition among collectors drives prices upward. This is where patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income, not overnight, not guaranteed, but through careful evaluation, preservation, and timing. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch strike sharpness. Look at Lincoln's jawline, cheekbone, and coat lines. Weak strikes reduce value. Strong, crisp detail increases collector confidence, especially in high-grade candidates. Another overlooked factor is original luster. That subtle cartwheel shine when the coin tilts under light. True mint luster signals untouched surfaces, which grading services and buyers prioritize heavily. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's walk through how someone might unknowingly own a strong example. Maybe it came from a bank roll decades ago and was set aside. Maybe it sat untouched in a drawer. Maybe it came from an inherited collection that was never evaluated professionally. These coins don't announce themselves. They don't look flashy, but under magnification, they sometimes reveal the qualities collectors quietly compete for. That's the essence of hidden financial potential, not hype, not speculation, but patient observation. And here's where many people get confused. They assume only rare dates matter. But in modern numismatics, condition rarities are often more valuable than date rarities. That's why even a common year penny like 1978 can outperform expectations if it meets elite standards. Let's also talk about market behavior. Collector demand isn't driven only by rarity. It's driven by registry competition, historical interest, and long-term investment behavior. High-grade Lincoln cents often trade among collectors building top-ranked sets. When two buyers want the same top-tier coin, prices can escalate quickly, especially when supply is thin. This difference can completely change interest from hobby curiosity to serious bidding. Now, one more warning that protects value: never polish, never scrub, never soak in chemicals, never attempt home restoration. These actions permanently erase the very surfaces collectors pay premiums for. If you think you've found a high-quality coin, the best move is to leave it untouched and store it safely until professional evaluation. This is where many people get confused. They think improving appearance improves value. In coins, the opposite is usually true. Now let's bring this all together. Most 1978 no-mint-mark Lincoln pennies are worth only face value. But a small percentage, those with exceptional condition, rare errors, or certified high grades, carry hidden financial potential that most people never discover. Not because the coins are secret, but because the details that matter are microscopic. And sometimes, those details lead to quiet wealth discovery, not overnight, not guaranteed, but meaningful for those who recognize what they're holding. So if you have a pile of old pennies at home, especially ones from the 1970s, this is your reminder to slow down and look closely. Check the date, look for doubling, observe the surfaces, tilt the coin under light, compare sharpness, and above all, avoid cleaning, because knowledge and patience matter more than speed. And before you go, if this surprised you, there's another penny date that has produced even more dramatic collector results, and it's one most people overlook completely. You'll want to see that next. So take a moment after this video to check your own coins carefully. You never know which ordinary-looking penny might be hiding extraordinary potential, waiting quietly to be recognized. Imagine reaching into a drawer, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that it's quietly worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it looks flashy, not because it's gold or silver, but because of tiny details most people overlook. Today, we're exploring the 1981 no-mint mark Abraham Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have handled, spent, or ignored. Yet select examples have sold for unusually high prices when the right features line up. And no, this isn't about hype. It's about understanding what separates ordinary pocket change from coins with hidden financial potential. Stay with me, because this is where many people get confused and where quiet wealth discovery sometimes begins. The year 1981 sits in a fascinating moment in U.S. coin history. America was coming out of economic uncertainty. Inflation had reshaped everyday prices, and the U.S. Mint was preparing for major changes in coin composition. Lincoln cents were still made mostly of copper at this time, but that wouldn't last long. Just 1 year later, in 1982, the mint would shift to zinc-based cents. That makes 1981 one of the final full years of traditional copper pennies, and collectors quietly pay attention to that. Now, when we say no mint mark on a 1981 penny, that means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia produced hundreds of millions of cents that year, so at first glance, this coin seems extremely common. And in most cases, it is. But here's the detail collectors quietly watch. Rarity isn't always about how many coins were made. It's about how many survive in exceptional condition and whether something unusual happened during striking. This is where many people get confused. They assume age alone creates value. But in coin collecting, age is only one piece of the puzzle. Condition, surface quality, strike sharpness, luster, and even microscopic errors can completely change interest. Let's talk composition for a moment, because this difference can completely change collector demand. The 1981 no mint mark penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing about 3.11 grams. That weight matters. If you've ever seen a 1982 penny that feels lighter, that's because the mint changed to zinc cores coated in copper later that year. But 1981 cents remain solid copper alloy, and collectors often seek these as part of copper-era Lincoln cent sets. Now here's where many people get confused. Not all 1981 pennies are equal, even when they look the same at first glance. Collectors focus on three major factors: condition, strike quality, and varieties. First, condition. A circulated 1981 penny, one that's brown, worn, or scratched, is usually worth just 1 cent to a few cents. But as condition improves, interest increases sharply. A bright red, uncirculated example that still looks almost exactly as it did the day it left the mint can sell for significantly more. And when professionally certified by grading services, some top condition examples have reached surprisingly high prices at auction. This difference can completely change interest. A coin that looks ordinary in a pocket might become something entirely different under magnification and proper lighting. Now let's talk strike quality, because this is another area where many people get confused. Some 1981 pennies were struck with weaker pressure, causing Lincoln's hair details or the lettering to look soft or blurry. Others were struck sharply, with crisp detail and strong luster. Collectors quietly watch for these sharper examples because they're scarcer, especially in high grades. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Full separation in Lincoln's hair above the ear, strong definition in the beard, and clear lines in the memorial building on the reverse. Coins that show these features often receive higher grades, and higher grades mean higher market demand. Now let's move into varieties and errors, because this is where the most unexpected income stories sometimes begin. Most 1981 no-mint mark pennies are standard strikes, but some show small minting anomalies that collectors actively seek. These include doubled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die cracks or breaks. Most people would assume these coins are damaged, but to collectors, some of these flaws are actually features, evidence of the minting process going slightly wrong in ways that create scarcity. This is where many people get confused. Damage from circulation usually lowers value, but mint errors that occurred during striking can increase it dramatically, especially if they're visually strong and authenticated. For example, a doubled die penny might show subtle doubling in the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile. Under magnification, the doubling looks like a shadow or echo effect. These are not common, but when verified, they can bring life-changing sale results for select examples, depending on strength, condition, and collector demand at the time of sale. Off-center strikes are another category collectors quietly watch. If part of the design is missing but the date is still visible, that coin becomes far more interesting. The greater the off-center percentage, while still retaining key details, the more collectors tend to compete for it. And then there are clipped planchets, where part of the blank metal disc was missing before the coin was struck. These look like curved bites taken out of the edge. Again, not damage, but minting errors that can carry real premiums when authenticated. Now let's talk about realistic value ranges, because credibility matters more than hype. A typical circulated 1981 no-mint mark penny is usually worth face value or just slightly more, often between 1 and 5 cents. An uncirculated example with red color might sell for anywhere from 50 cents to a few dollars, depending on eye appeal and surface quality. But when condition reaches the very top of the grading scale, especially in professionally certified grades, values can rise dramatically. Some high-grade examples have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars. And in rare situations involving top population coins or standout error varieties, select examples have reached into the thousands. This difference can completely change interest, because most people unknowingly spend or store coins that could qualify for higher evaluation if preserved correctly. Now here's where many people make costly mistakes. The first mistake is cleaning. Even gentle polishing can destroy surface originality, lowering collector value dramatically. A shiny coin isn't always a valuable coin. In fact, unnatural shine is often a red flag. The second mistake is improper storage. Tossing coins into jars, drawers, or pockets allows friction and moisture to damage surfaces over time. Even valuable coins can lose much of their potential due to careless handling. The third mistake is assuming all errors are valuable. Scratches, corrosion, and postment damage are not collectible errors. This is where many people get confused. True mint errors have specific characteristics and patterns that professionals recognize. Now here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Original mint luster. That soft glow that moves across the surface when you tilt the coin under light isn't just cosmetic. It signals untouched surfaces, and untouched surfaces command stronger prices. This is where patience matters more than speed. Many of the highest auction results didn't happen because someone rushed to sell. They happened because owners waited, learned, and chose the right moment and method to list or certify their coins. And that's where hidden financial potential quietly lives, not in hype, but in knowledge, condition, and timing. Now let's talk about how someone might realistically discover unexpected income from a 1981 no-mint mark penny. It usually starts with curiosity. Someone notices a bright copper penny that looks almost new, or they spot unusual doubling in the lettering, or they inherit a collection and begin sorting through it slowly instead of cashing it in immediately. This is where many people get confused. They think rare coins look rare, but many valuable coins look ordinary unless you know what to look for. And that's what makes this hobby so powerful. It's not about gambling. It's about observation, learning, and patience. Collectors today continue to watch the 1981 penny because it sits at the end of the copper era, because high-grade survivors are scarce, and because error varieties continue to surface years later. Even decades after minting, new discoveries are still being made, often in everyday change, old jars, or inherited collections. This difference can completely change interest, because it means the story isn't over yet. Now, if you're checking your own pennies, here's what to focus on. First, look at color. Bright red copper usually means less circulation. Second, check the date and mint mark or lack of one. No mint mark means Philadelphia. Third, inspect Lincoln's face and the lettering under magnification for doubling, distortion, or unusual shapes. Fourth, weigh the coin if possible. It should be close to 3.11 grams. And finally, examine the edges and overall shape for unusual cuts or off-center strikes. But remember, even if your coin doesn't turn out to be rare, every search builds knowledge, and knowledge compounds over time. This is where many people get confused. They think coin collecting is about luck, but collectors will tell you it's about preparation meeting opportunity. And sometimes, that preparation leads to quiet wealth discovery. Now, before we wrap up, here's something important. Not every 1981 no mint mark penny is valuable, but select examples, especially those with exceptional condition or verified errors, have achieved life-changing sale results for select examples, proving that even the most ordinary-looking coins can hold extraordinary stories. So if you've got old pennies in drawers, jars, or boxes, take a few minutes to look closer. Use light, use magnification, and most importantly, use patience. Because the next coin you examine might not change your life, but it might change how you see every coin afterward. If you want to continue learning, watch our next video on another Lincoln penny date that collectors quietly compete for, one that many people overlook, but that holds serious hidden financial potential. And remember, in coin collecting, knowledge and patience matter more than speed. If you've ever tossed a 1994 penny into a jar, a drawer, or even a coin roll without a second thought, you might want to pause for a moment. Because today, we're talking about a coin that looks completely ordinary, yet in very specific situations, verified examples have sold for prices that surprise even long-time collectors. Not every 1994 penny is rare. Most are common, but a small number sit in a completely different category, the kind associated with quiet wealth discovery and unexpected financial potential. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what separates the everyday coins from the ones collectors quietly compete for. This is where many people get confused, because when you hear 1994 no mint mark penny, it sounds like something special right away. But the truth is, no mint mark simply means the coin was made in Philadelphia. And in 1994, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 6 billion pennies. That alone tells us most examples are worth just face value or slightly more. But history has a way of hiding surprises in massive production years, and that's exactly why collectors continue to study this date. The year 1994 sits in an interesting era of U.S. coinage. Lincoln cents were already made from copper-plated zinc instead of solid copper, which began in 1982. That change lowered production costs but introduced new types of errors and striking issues, some subtle, some dramatic. This difference can completely change interest, because certain mistakes from this period are now among the most valuable modern penny varieties. Collectors still focus on the 1994 no mint mark penny for one major reason. Consistency in appearance makes true anomalies stand out clearly. When billions of coins look nearly identical, Even a small variation can command serious attention. This is where many people get confused, because they assume only very old coins can be valuable. But modern-era errors and rare conditions sometimes produce life-changing sale results for select examples. Let's talk about what you're actually holding when you look at a 1994 penny. A standard example weighs 2.5 grams, has a zinc core, and is plated in copper. The design features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that ran from 1959 to 2008. Most circulated examples show wear, scratches, or darkened surfaces, and those usually trade for just a few cents over face value in bulk. But collectors aren't looking at most coins. They're watching specific traits. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: condition. A 1994 penny that has never been circulated, with its original mint luster intact and sharp, crisp details, is already in a different category. These are called uncirculated coins, and the highest quality examples, especially those certified by grading services, can sell for tens of dollars. That might not sound dramatic yet, but condition is the foundation of value, and it becomes critical when combined with varieties and errors. This difference can completely change interest, because some 1994 no-mint mark pennies exist with striking errors that dramatically raise collector demand. One of the most talked about categories is the double die variety, where part of the design appears doubled due to a misalignment during the die-making process. Doubling on the date, the word liberty, or in God we trust, can create sharp, noticeable doubling that collectors prize. Verified examples of dramatic doubled dies from this era have sold for hundreds and sometimes more, depending on clarity and condition. Then there are off-center strikes. These occur when the blank planchet isn't positioned correctly during striking, causing part of the design to be missing. A small off-center strike might not be valuable, but when the date remains visible and the misalignment is dramatic, interest can spike. This is where many people get confused, because damage from circulation looks similar to mint errors, but collectors only pay for errors that occurred during production, not after the coin left the mint. Another category that quietly draws attention is broad strike errors. These happen when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar, allowing the metal to spread outward. The result is a wider than normal coin with a distorted edge. These can be subtle or extreme, and the stronger the effect, the more collectors tend to care. Again, condition matters. A clean, well-centered broad strike will always outperform a damaged one. Now let's talk realistic value ranges, because this is where credibility matters most. A typical circulated 1994 no-mint mark penny is worth 1 cent, or maybe a few cents in bulk copper-toned lots. Uncirculated examples, especially with strong eye appeal, often sell between $1 and $20 depending on grade. Certified top-grade examples, especially those graded MS67 or higher, can bring significantly more, sometimes into the hundreds. And rare error or variety examples, when verified and well-preserved, have reached 4 figures in certain auction results. This is where many people get confused, because they hear about a single high sale and assume all coins from that year are valuable. But collectors don't pay premiums for dates alone. They pay for condition, rarity, and authenticity. And when all three align, that's when hidden financial potential turns into real demand. Another mistake owners make is cleaning their coins. This single action destroys collector value instantly. Even gentle polishing or wiping leaves microscopic scratches that grading services detect immediately. A cleaned coin that might have been worth hundreds can drop to just face value. This difference can completely change interest, because collectors value originality above almost everything else. People also store coins improperly. Tossing them into jars, drawers, or pockets leads to scratches, rim dents, and surface wear. Instead, collectors use protective holders or flips, And this is where patient sellers sometimes experience quiet wealth discovery, because preserving a coin's condition over time keeps its potential intact while demand grows. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: color. Even among uncirculated pennies, natural red color commands higher prices than brown or red-brown tones. A blazing red 1994 penny with strong luster is far more appealing to collectors than a dull example, even if both are technically uncirculated. This subtle difference can double or triple value in certain grades. Now let's talk about something most people overlook: professional grading. Raw coins, even if they look impressive, rarely reach their full value without third-party certification. Grading services authenticate the coin, assign a condition score, and seal it in a protective holder. For higher-end examples or suspected errors, this step can make the difference between casual curiosity and serious collector competition. This is where many people get confused, because they think grading is only for rare gold coins or centuries-old pieces. But modern coins with top grades or unusual errors are some of the most actively traded certified items today. And some collectors specialize exclusively in high-grade modern cents, driving prices upward in quiet but consistent ways. So what should you actually do if you find a 1994 no mint mark penny? First, don't clean it. Second, check it carefully under good lighting and magnification. Look for doubling in the lettering, off-center strikes, unusual shapes, or anything that looks out of place compared to a normal penny. Then compare your coin to verified examples online through reputable auction archives or numismatic references. This difference can completely change interest, because what looks ordinary at first glance sometimes turns out to be something collectors have been waiting for. Now here's the part most people miss: patience. The coin market doesn't reward speed. It rewards accuracy, condition, and timing. Many experienced sellers didn't discover their best coins overnight. They found them quietly, verified them carefully, and waited for the right buyer. And while not every coin leads to big results, select examples have produced life-changing sale results under the right conditions. This is where many people get confused, because they expect instant answers. But coin collecting and selling is closer to investing than gambling. Knowledge and patience matter more than luck. And the more you understand what collectors want, the more confident you become in evaluating what you already own. So let's recap the truth about the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny. Most are common and worth face value. Some uncirculated examples carry modest premiums. A small number, especially those with verified errors, exceptional condition, or rare varieties, command serious collector attention. And it's within that narrow group where hidden financial potential lies. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: provenance. Coins with clear documentation, grading certificates, and strong auction records consistently outperform similar pieces without verification. That's why the same coin type can sell for wildly different prices depending on presentation and trust. Before we close, take a moment to actually look at your own pennies. Not just the shiny ones, not just the old ones, but every one that stands out even slightly. Because most people never inspect their change closely, and that's exactly why quiet wealth discovery still happens in the modern coin market. If this video sparked your curiosity, there's another penny date you should absolutely watch next. One with a reputation for dramatic errors and surprising auction results. And remember, in coin collecting, speed rarely wins, but knowledge, patience, and careful observation often do. Your pocket change might not change your life, but understanding it just might change how you look at every coin you touch from now on. If you've ever glanced at a modern penny and assumed it couldn't possibly be worth more than 1 cent, this video might surprise you. Because today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 2006 Lincoln penny with the D mint mark, a coin that millions of Americans still own. Yet only a small number of people realize some verified examples have sold for unusually high prices. Not because they're old, but because of details most people never think to look for. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what separates a common pocket change penny from one with real collector demand and potentially hidden financial potential. This is where many people get confused. They believe valuable coins must be rare dates from the 1800s or early 1900s. But collectors don't just chase age. They chase condition, errors, and overlooked varieties. And the 2060 Lincoln penny sits right in the middle of that quiet opportunity zone. Let's start with what this coin actually is. In 2006, the United States Mint was producing massive numbers of Lincoln cents. These were the familiar copper-plated zinc pennies, with Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. The Denver Mint, identified by the small d below the date, struck over 3 billion of these coins that year. So on the surface, this looks like one of the most ordinary pennies in existence. But here's a detail collectors quietly watch. When a coin is produced in such enormous numbers, even tiny variations, errors, or ultra-high condition examples become incredibly important. Because once billions are circulating, finding one that stands out becomes exponentially harder, and that's where interest begins. This difference can completely change collector demand. Most 2060 pennies in circulation today are worth exactly 1 cent, maybe 2 cents if they're shiny, but collectors don't pay premiums for average. They pay for exceptional. And this is where many people get confused, because they assume a coin is either rare or common, with no middle ground. But the real market lives in that middle ground, where condition, grading, and microscopic differences can transform a 1-cent coin into something that quietly sells for hundreds, and in select cases, even thousands of dollars. Let's talk about why this date still matters. 2006 wasn't just another year for Lincoln cents. It was part of the final era of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, which ended in 2008 before the major redesigns began. That makes coins from the mid-2000s especially interesting to collectors who specialize in complete sets of memorial cents in high grades. And this is where many people get confused. They assume only old coins are collectible. But set collectors want perfect examples from every year, even modern ones. And perfection is far rarer than age. Now let's talk about what separates common examples from high-value ones. First, condition. Most 2060 pennies have been circulated, meaning they've been used in everyday transactions, scraped against other coins, dropped, and handled for years. These are worth face value. But uncirculated coins, especially those preserved straight from rolls or mint packaging, are a different story. And when a 2060 penny survives in pristine condition, with full original luster, sharp details, no visible marks, and perfect surfaces, collectors begin to pay attention. This difference can completely change interest. Certified coins graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC in MS67 or MS68 condition, meaning near perfect, have sold for surprisingly high prices compared to their face value. While most are still affordable, select top-grade examples have reached into the hundreds of dollars, and in rare auction cases higher. Not because the coin is rare, but because surviving examples in that condition are. This is where many people get confused. They think condition means looks nice. But in the coin world, condition is measured under magnification. Tiny marks invisible to the naked eye can lower value dramatically. Now let's talk about varieties and errors, the area where hidden financial potential really begins to show. Some 2060 Lincoln cents were struck with die errors, mistakes during the minting process. These can include doubled dies, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or improperly aligned dies that create unusual spacing or design distortions. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Many of these errors are subtle enough that people spend them without realizing anything is unusual. But collectors actively search for them. And when verified, some error coins can sell for tens, hundreds, or even more depending on severity and eye appeal. And no, this doesn't mean every odd-looking penny is valuable. But it does mean that a small percentage of 2060 pennies carry characteristics that quietly elevate them into a different category altogether. Now let's talk about composition, because this is another area people misunderstand. By 2006, U.S. pennies were no longer solid copper. Instead, they were made of zinc with a thin copper coating. Some collectors assume copper content alone drives value, but that's not true here. Value comes from condition, scarcity in high grades, and errors, not metal weight. This is where many people get confused. They hear about copper pennies being valuable and assume all modern cents are the same. But for 2060, it's not about copper, it's about quality. So what are realistic value ranges? Let's walk through this carefully. Most circulated 2060 pennies are worth face value. Uncirculated examples from rolls or collections typically sell for a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition. Certified high-grade examples, especially MS67 and above, have sold in the $50 to $300 range, with select auction results pushing higher for top-tier specimens. And verified mint errors can range anywhere from $25 to several $100s, and in rare cases more, depending on the type and visual impact of the error. This is where many people get confused. They assume all valuable coins make headlines. But most high-value modern coins sell quietly, through specialty auctions, collector networks, and private transactions. That's what people mean when they talk about quiet wealth discovery in coin collecting. Now let's talk about the biggest mistakes people make with coins like this, mistakes that permanently reduce value. First, cleaning. Cleaning a coin, even gently, can destroy its collectible value instantly. It removes original surfaces and creates microscopic scratches that grading services detect immediately. A cleaned coin almost always becomes worth less than an untouched one, even if it looks shinier. Second, improper storage. Pennies stored loosely in drawers, jars, or pockets rub against each other and develop contact marks. Over time, this lowers grade and collector appeal. High-value modern coins survive because they were stored carefully from the beginning. Third, assuming all errors are valuable. Some coins are damaged after leaving the mint by machines, tools, or circulation, and these are not collectible errors. Only mint-made errors carry premium value, and distinguishing between the two takes experience or professional evaluation. This difference can completely change interest. Now here's something most people never hear. Some of the most interesting discoveries in modern coin collecting happen years later. When someone revisits old rolls, inherited jars, or forgotten collections and realizes that one or two coins stand out dramatically from the rest. Not because they expected it, but because they took time to look closely. This is where patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income, not through hype, but through careful inspection, research, and professional grading when appropriate. And this is where many people get confused. They think coin collecting success happens fast. But in reality, it often happens slowly, through quiet observation, knowledge, and timing. Let's talk about how to check your own 2060 pennies properly. First, look at the mint mark. The small D below the date confirms Denver Mint. Next, check overall condition. Does the coin still have bright luster? Sharp details on Lincoln's hair and coat? Clear lettering around the rim? Minimal marks? Then look closely at the date and lettering under magnification. Any doubling, distortion, or misalignment could indicate a variety worth researching further. And finally, weigh and measure the coin if possible. While rare for this date, unusual dimensions can point to mint errors. This is where many people get confused. They stop at the date. But collectors go deeper, into surface quality, strike strength, and tiny production quirks that separate ordinary coins from collector-grade pieces. Now let's talk about the emotional side of this, because this matters. Most people think of pennies as meaningless change. But for collectors, each coin tells a story not just of history but of probability. Out of billions of coins, only a handful survive in top condition, and fewer still carry unique mint characteristics. That's why select examples achieve life-changing sale results, not because the coin is old, but because the combination of condition, rarity, and demand aligns in just the right way. And while not every 2060 penny holds that level of value, the potential for hidden financial discovery exists, quietly, inside collections that haven't been carefully examined in years. This is where many people get confused. They think value always looks obvious. But in coin collecting, some of the most valuable pieces look ordinary until you know exactly what to look for. Now let's bring this together. The 2060 Lincoln penny is not rare in quantity, but it is rare in perfection. And that's why collectors continue to watch this date closely. High-grade survivors, verified mint errors, and exceptional strikes continue to generate steady interest, sometimes quietly, sometimes at auction, and occasionally with results that surprise even experienced collectors. Not hype, not guarantees, just probability, condition, and demand intersecting over time. And that's why knowledge and patience matter more than speed. If you have jars of old pennies, inherited rolls, or forgotten collections, take time to look closely, especially at modern coins people usually overlook. Because sometimes, the most unexpected discoveries don't come from rare dates, they come from ordinary years with extraordinary survivors. Before you go, I encourage you to check your own 2060 pennies carefully. And if you're curious about other modern Lincoln cents that have produced surprising results, watch the next penny video linked here. Because some of the most fascinating stories in coin collecting start with coins people once ignored. Remember, in this world, quiet observation beats hype, and patience often uncovers the most meaningful value of all.